Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna, and like I said in the last video, I decided to divide week 2 into 2 episodes. So welcome to episode 2 of the second week of becoming a fantasy expert in 6 months. Now, before anything, I am feeling much better, thank God, because I was going through it, okay? Like, you can probably tell from the other video that I was really going through it, but I'm happy to say I pulled through, I am alive, I am surviving, and I'm actually eating without getting nauseous, which is so amazing. And just like I said in the last video, I'm going to be learning more literary terms, and I want to talk about them a little bit more because there are so many literary terms that I just knew I couldn't fit all of them in one video. I mean, I could, but it would be an hour long, and I don't think you guys want an hour long video, and not even I want to do that because honestly, I just get tired, okay? I get tired of talking so much in front of the camera. So in this second week, that's what we'll be doing, is just continuing studying literary terms, and I've studied quite a few already, so I'm probably going to give you guys an update pretty soon. But first, I do have to get some things out of the way, but I really hope you guys buckle in because here we go to more literary terms. So here I am, ready to give you guys my first update on another episode of Fantasy Expert, and of course, like I said in the last video, we are continuing with literary terms. And the first one that I do want to talk about today is myth. And the reason why I want to talk about myth is because it is so prevalent in fantasy. We keep seeing over and over again several retellings of myths, of stories that have been here long before us, and that's why I think it's so important, because I think I did mention this in my first video where I said everything, or if it is familiar, it probably is from Greek mythology, because that's how much of an impact it actually does have in fantasy, and that's why I'm talking about myths. And myths are just stories, and then they usually involve, gods or a hero, a quest, something that they have to go through or overcome, or sometimes we have a hero that has some godlike powers or godlike qualities, but it's not a god, it's below a god. For example, Hercules, that's always the first one that comes to my mind. So basically, this is what a myth is. It is just stories that are so old, and as things might happen that don't really have an explanation because they don't really have science or technology. So in those times, they didn't really know what certain events were, and they made them seem so much more magical or so much more godlike than they actually were. But basically, this is what a myth is. It's just a very old story that has a hero, a quest, a nemesis, and a lot of trials and tribulations. Sometimes, and most of the times, it has gods. This is basically what a myth is, and it's not, anything surprising. It's not anything like, oh my god, this is groundbreaking. No, it's not. The reason why I mentioned it's solely because it has so much of an impact in fantasy specifically. That's why I literally mentioned it. And next up, we have a nemesis. I think we all need a nemesis in our lives and in fantasy books. So a nemesis, we all know what it is. It is someone that is our rival. That person is there so we can compare our main character to that particular character, or the nemesis is there to represent some sort of justice or injustice, all that kind of stuff. But basically, the nemesis is just the biggest obstacle that our character or protagonist must face because it is their rival. So basically, it's kind of like, that's what I want to be, that is what I have to surpass. That is who I'm constantly fighting against because I want to be better than that person, and that is what a nemesis is there for. I think in fantasy, it's always so important to have a nemesis. It's much more common in anime, especially shonen anime, because you always have, you always have the main character, and you always have a rival. It is a trope, and I love it, okay? I absolutely love it. I'm a sucker for it. Right now, I'm watching My Hero Academia, and of course, Deku's the main character. Who's his nemesis? Bakugo. That's his nemesis, although I hate Bakugo, okay? I really don't like him as a rival. But even if we go to Black Clover, for example, Asta, they are rivals. They are both fighting for the same thing. But basically, that's what a nemesis is there for. It's not really comparing both, but it's to compare the progress of the protagonist to the rival. That's how the authors use the nemesis generally. Afterwards, we have the narrator. Now, we all know what a narrator is. It's the one that reads the story. It's the one that is telling us the facts, the context, everything that is happening. But you do have a lot of, different types of narrators. You have narrators that are just watching. They're just watching, telling us the story. They're not an active participant. And then you have narrators that actively participate in the story. But the most common types are the ones that we all know, which is the first person is obviously an active participant of the story. It usually is our protagonist. We are seeing the story from their eyes. It's being told from their eyes, so we are in their minds. I do not mind this narrator style. I do like the first person. Third person is definitely my favorite, but I do think a lot of people prefer the first person. I think it's because it's much more personal. And then obviously, like I said, we have the third person, which is also very common, where this one, it's not an active participant in the story, but we do have lots of type of third third person narrators, because they can know everything that is happening and the character does not. So for example, the narrator is telling us extra information that the character doesn't know about, but the narrator knows everything that is happening in the story. Or the narrator is telling the story, but it also doesn't really know any extra information. It knows just as much as the protagonist, and that I do prefer that one. That is my favorite. I just don't like really knowing everything that is going on, because then it just creates a lot of anxiety in me, because I'm like, oh my god, like I know what's gonna happen. The protagonist doesn't know what the hell is going on, but I know. How are they gonna find out? Like, it just creates a lot of anxiety. But the third person is also very common. Now, second person, this one is not common at all, and I think I've only read two books where I have the second person, which is Harrow the Ninth, and I think the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. Harrow the Ninth is by Tamsin Weir, by the way. I think in Harrow the Ninth, I really enjoyed it. Now, is it very hard to pull off? It's very, very hard to pull off, because it's not really a style that we're used to, because the protagonist is always referred to as you. You see this, you saw that, and it's so weird, because it kind of feels like it's us. It's like, oh, what did we see? And it's not very, like I said, it's not easy to pull off. This has to be done with a lot of care. The reason why I liked it so much with Harrow the Ninth, it's because the way Gideon the Ninth ended made sense for the second person type of narrator. It just made sense, because it's usually so confusing when you have the second type of narrator. But that confusion made sense in that context, because Harrow, in Gideon the Ninth, she ends up being very, very confused. She doesn't really know what's going on. She doesn't even know if she's going crazy, if what she's seeing is true or not, or if she's just going balloony, just going crazy. And that's why I really liked it. In the 5th season, I didn't like it as much. I think it's because it just didn't really, I don't know, it's just very, like I said, it's very hard for someone and for a reader to actually like the second person POV or narrator. And I didn't really vibe with it in the 5th season, but in Harrow the Ninth, it actually made sense and I actually enjoyed it. So it's an example that the second person can be used. You just have to do it well. Next up, we have pacing. Pacing is very, very important in every single story, but I think in fantasy, it's even more important, because sometimes people really do complain about the pacing. And for example, one book that I did not like, and it was all because of the pacing, was Daughter of the Moon Goddess. And the reason why is because the pacing was so fast. It was so fast, and I know this is a duology, but that first book felt like it could have been a trilogy. I'm not kidding you, because so many things happened, and the author just didn't really let the scenes die down, in the sense of, like, there was always no resolution. It was, for example, oh my god, we got attacked by this giant monster, and then we relax a little bit, and then we're on to the next thing, and on to the next thing, and on to the next thing. We just couldn't really sit with what just had happened, and it made the story just feel so fast-paced, and nothing really mattered. It just didn't really matter. We always knew that the characters were going to prevail, because they couldn't die, and that's why, even though the stakes kept getting higher and higher, you didn't really feel that pressure or that tension, because you knew, okay, we're just gonna win this in some sort of way, and we're going to the next thing and on to the next thing. And that resolution and that, relaxation, or that period of just stillness, is so important. So important to have, because you need the stakes to build, you need everything to calm down, we need to process everything and all the consequences. And that's why I'm saying pacing is such a key element, because I didn't like Daughter of the Moon Goddess because of that. It didn't have anything wrong. It wasn't going to be a 5-star by any means, but it could have been at least a 3 if it didn't have this bad pacing. Now, with fantasy, you do have to be careful, and it really does depend on fantasy. But for example, I read a lot of high fantasy or epic fantasy. The pacing has to be slow, okay? It just does. And the reason for this is because you need to present the characters. You need to present the setting, the world, how everything works. How are the characters' lives? What do they normally do? What is their day-to-day life like? Oh my god, what do they want to do? What is their dream? What is their obstacle? How are they going to, surpass that obstacle? Or, oh my god, what is the incident? Okay, something is going to happen. Now, their day-to-day life is ruined. Their life is ruined. It's turned upside down. How are they going to react? You need all of this to be built. And it's a lot of things. And that's why I'm saying, in high fantasy or epic fantasy, I usually prefer the pacing to be slower. And you can do it in so many ways. The dialogues, the action scenes, or even the descriptions, everything can be slow, but it has to be important. It has to be relevant to the story. You can't just have, a lot of stuff just put in there and not really mean anything, if you know what I mean. It has to bring the story to life, or it has to keep the story moving, because obviously we're also going to be bored if we keep reading about things that don't matter. So pacing is extremely really important to really like a story. It makes or breaks a story in my opinion, and I think in everyone's opinion it does. So please be careful of the pacing whenever you're writing a story, because you really need to think, what type of story do I want to tell? Is this epic? Is this big? Or is this just, a smaller book where I can actually have a little bit of a faster pace because my story is not that great or not that big? It's just important for you to understand, okay, this is a story that I want to tell, and this is what I have to do to tell it. And lastly, for this update, I'm going to be talking about the protagonist. Now, we all know what the protagonist is. He is the character that everything surrounds around. He is the central character. The story revolves around him. The other characters revolve around him. Everything, okay? Just everything revolves around him. He is a narcissist. I'm just kidding, okay? Usually in fantasy, the protagonist is very much like a hero. He is hero-like. He's very altruistic, selfless. He's a good, kind person. He has a kind soul, a kind heart. He's always trying to help everyone. But he can obviously change throughout the story. We see that more and more with modern fantasy books, where the character is suffering a lot of, obstacles, a lot of problems. So much stuff is being thrown at him that obviously he has to have some character development. And sometimes, if it goes the wrong way, I love it, okay? Actually, side rant, I absolutely love when we have a goody-patootie main character and he becomes not evil, but he becomes a little evil. You know what I'm saying? Just the right amount of evil. I think the one character that I can think about, and sorry, because it's not books, okay? It's not really books. I don't know why I just can't really think of a book right now, but an anime character, Getsu, from Jujutsu Kaisen, Suguru Getsu, he starts off being someone very kind. He is a jujutsu sorcerer. He uses his powers to protect the weak, to protect those that cannot protect themselves. They don't even know that curses exist, the normal people. But something happens and he completely derails and he changes and he's like, I am going to kill every single person that does not have powers because it is not my responsibility to protect you weaklings. Y'all are weak and you are going to pay for that. That's literally what happens, and I just absolutely love that. For some reason, I can't really think of a book like that. I don't think I read any books where that happens to the main character. I think when we have a main character that usually derails in the third book, they start off a little bit, not bad people, but they're not heroic either. They're not really heroes. You can kind of tell that something is going to happen. So if you do have recommendations on books where the main character starts off being so good, so kind, and just a perfect soul, and becomes horrible at the end, please let a girl know. I need it. But this is what a protagonist is. It's just someone that is the central character of the entire story, where everything revolves around him, everything happens around him, and you have to have some character development, because this is the character that most people are going to connect to, relate to. This is the character that is going to bring all of the emotional weight of the story. It's the character that is going to make us laugh, cry, yell, rage. So it's very important for us to have a very, very good protagonist. And these are the 5 literary concepts that I brought to you today. I'm going to study a little bit more now. I've been feeling a lot better, thank God. I can actually eat without feeling nauseous, which honestly, thank God, because I was going through it a little bit. So I'm feeling much better. I'm feeling much more energetic, motivated to continue. So I'm going to continue studying. Not right now. I do have other things to do. I do have a master's thesis, to write, which honestly, it is so hard, okay? I like it, but it's just something that is so hard to do because you have to read so many things and they are not that interesting, okay? It's not like reading a 800 fantasy page book, because that, sign me up. I can totally do it in 1 month. But reading, 30 pages of a book about laws, no. Like, I need a special motivation for that. I need, my procrastination skills were good. Now, higher. I excel at procrastinating when it comes to my thesis. So I think I'm going to work a little bit on my thesis, and then if I do have more time to study, then I will. Otherwise, I'm going to study tomorrow, and I will bring you guys another update. Another day in another literary terms. I have 5 more for you guys, and the first one that I'm going to be talking about right now is prologue. The reason why I chose this is because it is so common in fantasy books, especially in fantasy. We always need a prologue, okay? I love prologues, and the reason why a lot of authors decide to use prologues is because you want to give a snippet of the main story. You usually tell, a small story. You usually use characters that are going to show up later, or even characters that die in that first prologue. Sometimes that really does happen. And the reason why you do this is because you want to show a little bit of a snippet, like I said. And it's something that is going to connect to the main story later on. For example, I'm reading Game of Thrones, and in the first book, we have the famous prologue where we have the White Walkers. They show up, they kill 3 rangers, 2 rangers, one of them escapes and he is executed, and that's when he tells Ned Stark that the White Walkers are coming. Nobody really believes him. They say, oh my God, they've been, extinct for 8,000 years, but we know they are coming. We know they're going to show up. We know they're going to connect to the main story, and literally they only connect connect in the third book, okay? The one that I'm reading now, A Storm of Swords, they only show up right now. I think in the second book you had some appearances, but not, full-on appearances like in this third book. So this is what prologues are for. You are setting up the story. You are showing the reader what is going to happen, what are the things that are going to connect to the main story. You're trying to show something that is going to leave them intrigued enough to continue. Another term that I really want to share with you guys is the quest. I'm not going to, talk a lot about it because I did talk about this one particular concept in the first video, but quests are always important, okay? Especially in fantasy books, because that's what we usually have. It's just quests, because they are what, makes the character, the protagonist, or even the other characters grow as people. It's that path that they have to go through with all of the obstacles, with their nemesis, with everything that is happening, with the problems. They have to find solutions. This is what makes the character develop. This is what makes the character change. This is what forces the character to adapt and to become better and to grow. And that's why quests are so important in fantasy. And also because they're just simply cool. It's so cool to go out on a quest. You have your own world, your own town, your own city. This is all you know. And the fact that you have to cross the world or go to a completely different city where you don't know anything about, it's scary. And in fantasy, that's usually what needs to happen because problems arise, things are happening, the world is at stake. So our main character does need to go someplace to try and find something that is going to stop the world from burning, stop the world from crashing down and burning. So quests are extremely important, and we all know, okay, we have, for example, the Lord of the Rings, Kings of the Wild, the Inheritance Cycle, probably even books that don't have the main plot point as a quest. For example, The Bone Witch, it also does have a little bit of a quest. It's not the main focus, and it's not really supposed to be a quest, but it can also be a quest. So please watch out for the quest because it is extremely important in fantasy. And another thing that I think is extremely important, especially in the fantasy genre, is the resolution. Because, like I said previously, with the pacing, you need resolution. Resolution is so important because this is when we sit with what happened. We sit with the consequences of what happened previously, with the battles, with the action. Whenever you have a rising action and then you have the climax of that rising action, you have something that happens, something extremely bad, or something, that was just very, very intense. You always need some sort of resolution. You always need to process what happened. You always need to sit down with what just happened, And it's so important. So please, if you're writing a book, please do not forget about this resolution because this is what makes us, feel the weight of the stakes. This is what makes us feel the weight and the consequences of everything that just happened. If we don't have this sort of resolution, if we don't have this calm before the other storm, things are not going to feel, real. We're just not going to be taking things seriously, like I explained with Daughter of the Moon Goddess, because we're just going to think, okay, they can just literally escape or survive anything that they want because nothing matters. We're always, on to the next thing. There's no resolution. We're never stopping. It's just go, 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 go. Don't do that, okay? Just don't do that, especially in fantasy, because we have so many stakes. The world is usually, at stake. Something is bad going to happen. The world is going to die, or God is going to come down. It's going to destroy us all, or we need to do this, and that to save the kingdom. So please have a resolution. And of course, we couldn't really have a fantasy book without a setting. The setting is so important because this is where, the story is going to take place. The setting is going to directly affect the story, the characters. It's what gives us the context for everything. Without the setting, the story just would not make sense. We need the location, the time, how it is geographically, demographically, what is the climate in that area. We just need all of these informations because this is what gives the context to the story. This is what gives context to the readers. For example, Stormlight Archive, the planet of Roshar, it's just so well constructed, it's so well thought out that everything just feels real, and every single element of the world building has some sort of connection to the story. It has some connection to the characters. Without those elements of the setting, the story would not make sense at all when it comes to the Stormlight Archive. So please pay attention to the setting. When it comes to fantasy, we can do literally anything. We are bound by nothing. We can use all of our imagination. We can create all sorts of creatures, all sorts of places, social hierarchies. Anything can literally make sense. So use this to your advantage and make sure that the setting is connected to the story and the characters, because otherwise it's just kind of like a place, this place where everything is happening, nothing really connects to anything, and it's just not that good. In a fantasy book, I do believe it's very, very important for the setting to have a direct connection to the story and characters. So whenever you're building a setting, please do not forget to connect the setting with the story and the characters, because trust me, it's going to make the story feel so much more alive. And of course, no story would be complete without a theme. Themes are extremely important in any sort of book, okay? Not just fantasy, but fantasy as well. You always need a theme. You always need a main theme that you talk about. It can be whatever you want: mental health, politics, corruption, how society bounds people, how society discriminates. Anything that you want, you can have and you can talk about in a fantasy book, and you always should have a main theme. Now, you can also have several other themes, but I think a main one you really need to have. And all the other themes, that aren't as important as the main theme, I think it's very important for you to give some room for the reader to also use, their skills of interpretation, of just letting them read whatever they want to read, or letting them take whatever they want to take. I think that's very cool and very important, to let the reader, to have some critical thinking of their own, to try and interpret things on their own. That is also very important. So please have, a general main theme where your entire story and characters and even the setting revolves around, because you always need a message. If a story doesn't really have a message, it's not really a story, You always want to convey something. It can be something very, very simple, as, for example, don't do to others what you wouldn't like others to do to you. Just simple, something very, very simple. But please always just have like this one main theme that you can convey and that you can talk about and explore, and then have all other themes, be a little bit open to interpretation, and just so the reader can, just take their own conclusions from it, because that is something that is just extremely fun to do. And just like that, we have reached the end of this video, guys. Next week, I'm not going to post a fantasy expert episode. That is going to be in 2 weeks, okay? That's when I'm going to post this episode, which is episode 2, part 2, like I said. Next week, I'm actually going to be posting a video that is a little bit, outside of my comfort zone, but I really had fun filming it. So I do hope you like it. And in 2 weeks, we're coming back to the fantasy expert, okay? You're going to see this video in 2 weeks. And honestly, I just hope you're enjoying this, because this has been so much fun. Like, I know I've said this many, many times, but it really has been so much fun. So if you could please support me, just like and subscribe. It would mean the world to me. It's not a lot of work for you, but it means a lot to me. And it gives me the motivation to keep posting these videos and to keep making them, because it is not easy to keep filming and editing these videos, okay? But without further ado, I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much. Bye!